Today, we will be reviewing the AT-AI bot. Stick around to the end to see if this is a real expert advisor worth your time or just another MQL5 scam. So this bot is quite interesting as it trades gold, which is my favorite pair, hence why it caught my attention, and I wanted to see how they are using AI. And a very good sign, and something which is quite neat, is that they specifically mention that this bot requires web requests to work properly. And that actually makes a lot of sense because a good telltale sign that a bot is actually not using AI is if it says it uses AI but doesn't include either a model file for the expert advisor to read from or an API address in which to access a web-based API. That just means that there's effectively no way that the expert advisor could actually be using artificial intelligence. But here it's mentioning that backtesting would not be indicative of the actual strategy because web requests are not possible in a backtesting environment. And as somebody who's developed multiple MT5 expert advisors, this is usually the case. You can't actually run web requests successfully from the strategy tester. Perhaps it's done for security purposes by MetaQuotes, but yeah, this actually is a valid reason here. That being said, it could also be used as a way to discredit backtesting, so something which we have to keep in mind when we go through. And maybe to go through the description to get a better idea of how this works. They're really saying that this is a gold-specific expert advisor, and it's using the Grok AI model to analyze market data and generate signals. And another really good point is that the EA combines traditional technical analysis with AI. This is also, in my experience, how you need to use artificial intelligence. There's a ton of noise in market data in general, and if you try and only make decisions based on artificial intelligence, it's really hard to backtest and to have a consistent trading approach. So personally, what I like to do is usually have your initial signal generated by technical analysis and then have artificial intelligence as like a filter or as a second layer on top of it. And this also makes sense. If you understand how training artificial intelligence models work, if you try and train a model on complete random data, so when there's no setup, it won't find anything. It won't actually be able to establish a relationship and have any sort of predictive edge. So what I have found is if you first generate signals with technical analysis and then train a model on those setups effectively, you can usually find some degree of edge because technical analysis is already giving you an edge. So if they're also taking this approach, that would make sense and would be consistent with what I have seen AI used effectively at. So here is saying that they're feeding technical indicators, volatility, and price action to the model, which would all make sense. And they're using ATR for position management, so they're using a trailing stop loss, also which makes a lot of sense. And they're giving some quick installation guides here and giving an indication of what filters this bot would use. We can now go over to the setup page here to see what the developer is telling us. And effectively, it's just a nice instruction guide. And they're mentioning that the model which is being used is the Grok model. Interestingly enough, when I first saw this, I thought it was maybe a typo because the X or the Twitter model is now Grok with a K, so Grok. But after a bit of Googling, I found that Grok with a Q actually is a real artificial intelligence company, and they offer these models via an API. So they could very well be using this. It is a real company. They have a real open API, so you could likely access it via web request. But you always have to keep in mind that using any of these large language models comes with a cost. So you always have to be skeptical. Are they actually using them properly? Are they actually paying for the users of the expert advisors to have access? There's no proof that they're not, but it's just something to keep in mind. Like, you can't usually use these AI APIs for free. You have to buy tokens, or you need to have access. Maybe there's an exception for Grok, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. However, the developer could very well be doing everything properly here as well. And also they're asking to give access to Forex Pro tools. This is likely for some sort of news filter or any sort of filter. And now they're just giving a bit of indication about some of the benefits of AI versus traditional bots. And some of these don't really make a ton of sense. Like ease of setup, I would argue that AI bots are probably more complicated to set up. As is speed, it should make effectively no difference. But you know what, they're just trying to explain how it works. They're trying to explain natural language processing, which is also relatively useless to this type of trading bot. But yeah, interested to kind of dive into the backtest to see how they're actually using it. And something also which they specifically mentioned is that backtesting will not be indicative, so that could be quite interesting when we run the backtest and see how it looks. So let's now dive here into MetaTrader to see what this looks like. I've taken the liberty of downloading the Expert Advisor already, and this matches the sales page. It runs on the M15 time frame trading gold. If we move over to the Inputs tab, we can see that the ATR for the trailing stop is running on the 5-minute time frame. So they're doing some multi-time frame analyses. I set the lot size to minimum lots just to facilitate backtesting. There is a time filter here, pretty much saying don't trade during the low volatility hours. And they're saying, hey, we are using a news filter, and true, so there is a news filter going on. Perfect. So let's maybe just run a quick backtest using every tick based on real ticks, and we can come back in a second to see how that looks. Okay, we are now back with the results of the backtest. As you can see, it's not great when an equity curve goes straight down, but I think I should provide some context here. If you look to the actual window where the backtest ran, you can see that this was clearly trading like crazy, right? It's making a ton of trades, oftentimes multiple times per 15-minute candle. So we'll run a visual backtest in a moment to see how exactly the system works. But I would venture that this is currently trading a ton, as there's no filters, or there's minimal filters being applied. In theory, if you use an AI filter, it should also significantly reduce your number of trades. So perhaps by significantly reducing the number of trades and being more selective, we wouldn't see this massive flurry of trades. It would only be taking the best ones. So if they are properly using AI, perhaps this picture would look very different. However, before we jump into the visual backtest, I also wanted to run an open, high, low, close backtest, because this looks like a very, very quick scalping based system. And quite often, if you switch to 1 minute open, high, low, close, and you remove the impact of spreads, and you run a backtest, all of a sudden, it looks very different. So this is likely a scalping system, a very, very frequent scalping system. And we can see here that the difference between the open, high, low, close backtest and the every tick based on real tick backtest is spread. And frankly, this approach is often destroyed through the use of spreads, or not the use of spreads, but by the impact of spreads. So now let's run a visual backtest just to see how the strategy would actually look when running. So let me switch it back to every tick based on real ticks, visual mode, and let's let it rip. And here we go. Perfect. So let me slow down so we can get an indication of how it actually runs. So we can see that it's quickly placing pending orders around candles. Okay, let me pause when it places the pending orders. Interesting. So we're running here on the M15, and we can see that it's placing pending orders when the candle pulls back and waiting for the candle to hit and essentially go back down and then open the pending order. That's very interesting. So it's almost trading pullbacks of the bar. Probably waiting for a certain range to be created in a candle, or for some degree of pullback to be created, placing pending orders, and then attempting to scalp tiny profits. So this is not a type of system which I am as familiar with. However, my understanding is this is actually a viable trading system. So it can depend though. This is a real strategy, but that's what I mean by viable. However, spreads oftentimes destroy any profits which you can make using this system. I would caveat that and say perhaps through the use of artificial intelligence, they're applying a filter which is only taking the best of these trades. And through that, they're able to compensate for the negative impact of the spreads. That being said, unless we actually run this live, we wouldn't be able to tell. So maybe to kind of wrap up this review, this is running a very, very tiny scalping system where it trades a ton in order to scalp minuscule profits. Quite often, this type of system is rendered unprofitable because spreads are too significant, and this is 8-cap data, so it's a very low spread broker. However, what the seller could be doing here is using artificial intelligence to increase the threshold to make a trade, and by doing so, spreads will affect it less. Unfortunately, we can't test that until we were to actually buy this bot, and it's $350, so I prefer not to buy it for a quick test. However, it could very well be a lot better than this because the filters make it more selective. So my conclusion would be, let's wait a few days, because this is a new bot, to see if a live signal page is published. We can then monitor the live signal page to see how the trades are looking and look at the percentage profit relative to the spreads. And that could very well be making a difference. Because if we're seeing that, hey, the spreads are essentially negating any profitability you have, this would not be a profitable system. However, perhaps through the use of AI filters, it's being a little bit more selective. Maybe we can actually compensate for the spreads and make an approach like this work. So my conclusion is let's wait a bit and see. But if you guys buy this bot and have some feedback, please let me know in the comments, because I'm actually quite curious as to how this particular method of scalping, which is bar scalping, would work in a real market environment with spreads. So yeah, let me know. Take care and have a great day. Before you click away, if you're looking to get a real expert advisor, here at Prosperity Algo Solutions, we're currently offering our Golden Time Bomb system, based on automating the London breakout and opening range breakout 100% for free. Watch the pinned video to find out more and to get access.